أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ومن تبعهم برضوان إلى يوم الدين. So today is day 19th, and so we have come to Juz 18, which contains two surahs that I think are very widely discussed and recited and commented upon, which are the Surah Al-Mu'minun and Surah An-Nur. If you follow my thoughts, you will remember that I think there is an order in Quran, and order is important because order was revealed from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If it wasn't important, then it would not have been part of revelation. So Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to instruct whenever he would receive a revelation as to where it should be placed, and he will immediately call for his writer and instruct where it should be written. And the companions took so much care regarding it that Prophet ﷺ passed away without first defining whether Surah Tawbah is a new surah or a continuation of Al-Anfal. And so he never instructed that to write Bismillah there. And because of the absence of that instruction, the companions never wrote Bismillah there. And you can also see how the whole subject matter transitions from Anfal to Tawbah, how they are similar surahs and how they are considered twins. So in the same way, I think it is important to reflect on Surah Al-Mu'minun and Surah An-Nur. Surah Al-Mu'minun, the focus is individual, and Surah An-Nur, the focus is the society, the community. And so Islam carries this very fine balance between individualism and community and society, the interest of the two. And although societies have oftentimes treated them as tension between the two, or which comes first, or which should supersede which, but in Islam there is no tension between the two. It gives a very fine balance between the two, and from an Islamic perspective, the individual well-being and individual righteousness and individual health is reflected in the communal and societal well-being, and communal and societal well-being is reflected on individual health, and they all reflect on each other, and they all depend on each other because communities are formed from individual beings. So they both reflect on each other, and so there cannot be any tension between them. The makeup of the whole from its parts, and so the parts have a defined role to play, and the whole reflects what the parts are made up of. And so there's a lot of importance on the individual character, and not just individual character in terms of its outward manifestation, but an individual character that is righteous and good, not in its outward manifestation, but also in its inner self. And this is also a very big contrasting point compared to the secular world, in which the society considers as long as person's outward behavior conforms to the laws and rules, then it doesn't care what that person is, and what is the motivation for that person to do that. Because it doesn't care. All it cares is that law should be followed in terms of the society, in terms of the communities that we are part of, and where we devise those rules and laws. But in Islam, there is a fine balance in which not only that you should conform to the rules that Allah has given, but your heart, your spirit should conform to it. And it says the outward manifestation is immaterial to Allah if the inward spiritual state does not follow what the outward manifestation is. And there cannot be the tension between the two. That cannot be a fight between the two. It has to conform to the outward. So it creates a whole lot of a human being, where human being is not divided, is not conflicted in his existence. The two existence that we have, spiritual and the physical, the one that faces the world, and that the one that is internal within us that faces Allah. There cannot be a conflict between the two. And that conflict can result in an unhealthy human being. And an unhealthy human being will contribute to an unhealthy society. And so in that sense, it is important to understand this fine balance and this emphasis on a reform that starts from the person's inner self and spirit and flows out to the society. And when it invites to observe the rules that Allah has given us for the society, then it asks us to conform to those rules not based on the fact that they are the laws, but He asks that we should conform to them based on our own inner push that we should find in our own selves for our accountability before Allah. And so this is where I come to this verse in Surah Al-Mu'minun, which says, وَالَّذِينَ يُؤْتُونَ مَا آتَوْا وَقُلُوبُهُمْ وَجِلَةٌ أَنَّهُمْ إِلَىٰ رَبِّهِمْ رَاجِعُونَ. That they give from what they have been given with hearts that are trembling with the thought that they are going to return to Allah. And so this is how the action is communal, is societal, is something that you do for the society. You understand the good of doing that, and the benefits that charity brings to the society. But it is not asking you to do that charity purely from the perspective of the society, the humanistic perspective that people base ethics and morals on in today's society, but an inner sense that is driven by such powerful force that a person is trembling with the thought of appearing before Allah and returning to Allah and being held accountable for his deeds before Allah. And so we find the surah starts with an assurance that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives, a guarantee that He gives, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ, that indeed the believers are successful, have succeeded. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. I mean, it doesn't even use a sense that you will succeed. But when Quran uses a past tense, it conveys it. I mean, in grammatical, it can convey a past tense, something that happened in the past that has already happened. But it also conveys something that is so apparent, so clear, that in Arabic language, this tool is used to describe it as if it has happened. It's done. So قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. I mean, we use that expression in our daily language as well. When someone asks you to do something and you want to assure that it will be done, you say, consider it done, as if it's already done. And so in that sense, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ, that indeed believers are successful. And then it gives you a very broad level of qualities that must be manifested in a believer as a result of his faith in Allah. And these are very broad qualities and deal with the different aspects of our existence individually and as collective beings in the society. And first and foremost, as we have already covered multiple times, because this theme keeps coming up in Quran, which is our connection with Allah, our creator, our communication, our connection, our emotional connection, our sense of dependency and depending on him, and our sense of whatever we have is a favor from him, again from him as being the source of it. Without that connection, all the other things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is describing are not possible to develop. They are developed on this foundation of faith, of this foundation on connection with Allah. وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنِ اللَّغْوِ مُعْرِضُونَ. And then they don't allow themselves to be distracted by unuseful, futile things. All around you, the world is constantly sounding and pushing images and sounds and incidents and things towards you, which has no bearing on your life, no significance for your life. And so to stay away from all of those things, idle, and it also includes idling, where you are just idling and not doing anything purposeful. And so وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنِ اللَّغْوِ مُعْرِضُونَ وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِلزَّكَاةِ فَاعِلُونَ. And then it comes to the community aspect of your character, that you are charitable, that you take care of the society, that you understand the need to take care of those who are unable to take care of themselves in the society. But again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala presents zakat not as a need of the society. I mean, primarily, it discusses zakat as a need for you to purify yourself. And zakat word itself is derived from the zakah and tazkiyah, which means purification. وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِفُرُوجِهِمْ حَافِظُونَ إِلَّا عَلَى أَزْوَاجِهِمْ أَوْ مَا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانُهُمْ فَإِنَّهُمْ غَيْرُ مَلُومِينَ. And those who guard their private parts. And this is again a part of the society. I mean, you see how the society has sexualized almost everything, even to sell ordinary things it uses that aspect of the human psychology. And this is the greatest source of corruption amongst human beings. And so it is important that we take care of not allowing ourselves to fall into such things. So illa ala azwajihim aw ma malakat aymanuhum, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides us with a sound, healthy ways in which we can take care of that aspect of our creation. فَمَنِ ابْتَغَى وَرَاءَ ذَلِكَ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْعَادُونَ. And anyone who seeks it outside of it is the one who is exceeding the limits. وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِأَمَانَاتِهِمْ وَعْهْدِهِمْ رَاعُونَ. And they are honest and truthful and dependable in the society. So although these are very broad level of characteristics that Allah describes, and you can see all the characteristics of the believers being summarized in just these few words, but they are fundamental, and they emanate from some very basic fundamental righteousness of a person. And that fundamental righteousness grows into a person being able to keep his word, being truthful, being honest, and also being decent in the society, in his interactions with others, in interactions with the other gender, and also his connection with Allah, and his not allowing himself to be distracted by things that distract people in general in the society. And so I think this flows from this individual qualities. And from individual qualities we come to the next surah, which is the Surah An-Nur, which gives certain instructions in terms of our societal conduct in the society, and gives instructions regarding how we behave in the society, and it prescribes certain rules for it. And the reason we need to understand why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides us with these rules is that we as human beings cannot determine these rules based on experimentation, based on statistical analysis, because in that case it will be constantly be a moving target. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides for us these rules for a healthy living, for a healthy society, that these are essential rules. And sometimes we have difficulty in understanding them because we consider them to be not good for us as an individual. You want all the freedom to do whatever you want in the society. But that those freedoms, if everyone starts to take those freedoms, then you can see how chaotic and how problematic society becomes. So the society, in all human societies, whether they believe in Allah or not, have recognized that the societies in their collective existence need to conform to certain rules and regulations in order to make that society function. And unless the society functions, if it is unhealthy society, then individuals will not be able to function properly, will not be able to benefit from it, because we are created in such a way, because we are dependent on that social existence, which even social scientists describe by saying that human beings are a social animal. So in that context, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides us certain etiquettes of how we behave with each other, how we behave within the gender that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us as pairs in this world, and how He institutes some severe punishment for some of the rules if they are broken in the society, because unless severe punishment is implemented for them, to recognize the seriousness of those things. So in that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us those rules. But I think for the shortage of time, I'm going to focus on the one verse that comes in the middle of the surah. And what is the significance of this verse with the rest of the surah? And that verse is Allahu nuru samawati wal ard mathalu nurihi kamishkatin fiha misbah al-misbahu fi zujaja الزجاجة كأنها كوكب دري يوقد من شجرة مباركة زيتونة لا شرقية ولا غربية يكاد زيتها يضيء ولو لم تمسسه نار نور على نور يهدي الله لنوره من يشاء ويضرب الله الأمثال للناس والله بكل شيء عليم. God is the light of the heavens and the earth. His light is like His light is like this, that there is a niche, and in it is a lamp. The lamp inside a glass like a glittering star, fueled from a blessed olive tree, which is from neither east nor west, whose oil almost gives light even when no fire touches it. Light upon light. God gives whoever He wills to His light, guides whoever He wills to His light. God draws such comparisons for people, and He is full of knowledge of everything. So, I cannot just even try to summarize the ways in which this ayah has been interpreted from both spiritual perspective, legal perspective, grammatical perspective, Sufi perspective, and so all those different perspectives in this people have tried to understand this verse. But one way in which I have understood this verse is that Allahu nuru samawati wal ard. Why there is a need for this in the middle of this surah, which almost all of it deals with the social context, the social organization of life for human beings in this world, and why that is mentioned. The way to understand it is to understand that there is the world in which we understand there is a cause. This world is based on causations. There is a cause effect between everything. If you put your hands in the fire, it's going to burn. If you drive on the wrong side of the road, you are going to get into an accident. If you bang your head to the wall, you are going to get hurt. So those causations are immediately available to man to observe, and so we design safety and security based on those observations. We have safety rules against fire, we have safety rules against things that can harm us, and things we create safety regulations around them, that what is the safe limits to operate certain things. And that is well known to us because those are based on physical laws. But in the moral laws, the same causations work in exactly the same way, that every action will have always yield exactly the same result, but not in the same way as physical world. Because in the moral world, things take their time. The fire may be instant to burn, but the effects in the moral world are not instantaneous, because they are dependent on many factors, many variables that we are not unable to understand. But those factors are there. These are all based on a very strict rules. Sunnatullah, falan tajida li sunnatillahi tabdila. Those rules don't change. Those rules are not arbitrary. Those rules does not mean that some people will see the ill effects and others will not see. Because if you see an ill effect of some moral teaching, depends on many other factors, many other teachings that are surrounded by it. And the ill effects can be mitigated by some other things. Similarly, ill effects of fire can be mitigated sometimes by what you were wearing and what kind of insulation was available and all of that. So in that sense, there are mitigating factors that slow down the effect of the moral teachings and moral laws. And so human beings are left with not being able to fully fathom and understand the effects of those moral teachings. If I do something behind closed doors between two people, how does it affect the world? And how is it going to influence the society? We're unable to see that. We are unable to determine that empirically, although it will appear with time into what kind of society we become as a result of what kind of individuals we become. But it is not immediate. And this is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala points to the moral world, the moral realm as describing that one day of Allah is like 1,000 days for you, and one day for Allah is like 5,000 days for you. Because it is describing this functioning of the moral world in a very different time frame. And although it is as strict, the cause and effect thing is as strict as it is in the physical world. So we need to be shown that. And if we need to be shown that, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Allahu nur samawati wal ard. He is the nur. It is through Him that you will be able to see. Because this is not something that you can determine empirically through experience, through history, through your analysis. But because in your analysis of history, you can attribute so many complex things through which human beings go through as being the factors for the fall or whatever people suffered and whatever people saw. And it will be very difficult to directly link that with the moral teachings. And so here I think it is important to understand that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks in the context of the surah, and this is just one perspective I'm giving you, one way to understand this verse, and otherwise if one wants to spend, you can spend days and months trying to understand this verse and so many different aspects of this verse. But in terms of the immediate context in which this verse occurs, this is something that strikes me as an explanation that is sound, and that is Allah Nur Samawati wal Ardi. And then so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes on to describe His Nur. And His Nur also is something that is uh, 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 that something that you have to seek to see it. You have to understand, you have to come to believe in it in order to be able to see it. So it is enclosed in inside. And so again, that explanation in the social context in which the surah describes about the etiquettes of male-female interactions and the ghaddul batar and permissions to enter homes and the permissions within the families and all of those instructions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives in this surah, very broad instructions. They are all we understand the good or bad of those instructions based on how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it clear for us. So we are dependent on Allah's nur to be able to see the causations behind our behaviors in that realm. And we cannot determine it in ourselves. And so we sometimes fail to understand. And when we fail to understand, we start discussing in the individual terms whose rights and whose wrongs, and how the society goes into this extreme, like a pendulum, of determining whose rights are more and what is the correct behavior and what is not correct behavior in this realm. And this is where I think we need to understand that Allah Nur Samawati wal Ard is that it is without Allah's nur, without Him making it appear to us and clear to us, we will never be able to reach the truth in how we should organize our social life in terms of its moral and ethical dimension. The moral and ethical dimension of social life is something we must gain from the revelation that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed to us. So أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم.